There is an uncomfortable truth that few dare to face head-on. Most of the time, it's not the world that ruins our lives. It's us. And the worst part is that many times we don't even realize it. It's not the boss who doesn't value you. It's not the partner who doesn't understand you. It's not the lack of opportunities, not even bad luck. It's something quieter, more intimate, more lethal. An error that doesn't shout, that doesn't pound on the door, that doesn't leave visible bruises, but that seeps into every decision you make, every word you tell yourself, every excuse you manufacture. It's invisible self-sabotage. Maybe right now you're living with it without knowing. You feel it when you tell yourself that tomorrow you really will start, and tomorrow never comes. When you have an opportunity right in front of you, but you find a logical reason to let it pass. When you demand perfection from yourself to justify doing nothing. When your mind repeats a story of defeat before you've even tried. There it is, working in silence. And you, without meaning to, give it the tools to keep building the cage. You don't call it by its name, but you feed it every day. You feed it when you believe your thoughts are absolute truths, when you try to control what never depended on you and neglect the only thing that actually was in your hands. You feed it every time your inner dialogue becomes a whip instead of a guide. This error doesn't live outside. It lives inside. It lives in your way of thinking, of talking to yourself, of postponing, of giving in to what's easy. I want you to picture yourself 1 year ago. How many of your dreams are closer to coming true today? How many are in the same place? And how many did you let die because it wasn't the right time, because you weren't ready, because you didn't have what it took? I'm not saying this for you to punish yourself. I'm saying it so you can see it, because as long as you don't see it, it will stay hidden in your shadow, controlling your life from there. Sometimes this invisible error disguises itself as prudence. Better not try just yet, I'll wait for the perfect moment. Or it dresses up as humility. No, I'm not good at that. There are others better than me. But the truth is, the perfect moment never comes. And humility is not hiding your light. It's a lie the mind tells to protect you from the fear of failure. But in that attempt to protect you, it locks you in. I know that maybe right now you're thinking, yes, but my case is different. I really have had real obstacles. I really have gone through things others wouldn't understand. And that may be true. I don't minimize your pain. I don't ignore the times doors were slammed in your face, the betrayals you suffered, the defeats that hurt. But this error I'm talking about has nothing to do with what happened to you, and everything to do with what you do with what happened to you. There are people who have gone through worse hells and came out stronger, and there are others who, with fewer wounds, stayed stuck for life. The difference isn't in the past, it's in the way you think, in the invisible beliefs that guide or sabotage your every step. I want you to look it in the face today, to recognize it, because the first step to defeating an invisible enemy is to make it visible. And that's not done with pretty phrases or empty optimism. It's done with a brutal self-honesty check. It's done by asking yourself, how many times have I stopped myself? How many opportunities have I let pass because I was afraid I wasn't ready? How many days have I wasted thinking about what could go wrong instead of starting? This episode is not to be listened to like background music. It's not for you to have playing while you check your phone or think about what you'll do next. It's for you to stop, to feel uncomfortable, to feel that mix of shame and awakening that appears when someone tells you a truth you always knew but never wanted to hear. I'm going to speak to you from Stoicism, because there's no other philosophy that better understands the need to cut the problem at its root, instead of painting over the surface. It's not about motivating you for a while, it's about starting to train your mind to stop being your own enemy. Because I assure you, until you do, no strategy, no course, no technique will save you from yourself. Today we're going to expose that invisible error. We're going to take it apart piece by piece. And not to make you feel guilty, but to help you take back the power you've been giving away without realizing it. Because you can't build a life you love if every day you sabotage it from within. Get ready to hear things you might not want to hear. Get ready to stop hiding behind well-decorated excuses. Get ready to understand that change doesn't start when everything gets better. It starts when you stop lying to yourself. And if you decide to stay until the end, this may be the moment when you finally see clearly something that has been in front of you all along. The real obstacle hasn't been the world. It's been you, and that, as painful as it is the best news you could get. Because if the problem is you, the solution is also you. Before we start, I want you to write in the comments, "From today on, I will not be my own enemy." Because the truth is, most of the time, it's not the world that stops you. It's you. It's those decisions you postpone, those excuses you embrace, those thoughts you repeat until you believe them. Every time you sabotage yourself, you're not only delaying your goals, you're betraying yourself. And today, here, you decide that ends now. This is not a space to justify your limits, but to break them, to look yourself in the eye and acknowledge that it's time to stop putting stones in your own path. Without further ado, let's begin. Stoic. First lesson, do not confuse thoughts with truths. The most common invisible error that sabotages your life lies in such an ordinary place that it often goes unnoticed, believing that what you think is reality. Epictetus said it with brutal clarity. We are not affected by what happens to us, but by what we tell ourselves about what happens to us. Most people live forgetting this. They believe their mind is a faithful mirror of the world, when in reality it is a subjective narrator, one that interprets, distorts, and colors every fact. Think about the last time you felt something was impossible. What made you feel that way? Was it an objective, measurable, irrefutable fact? Or was it a chain of thoughts that began with, "I can't," and ended up convincing you that it wasn't even worth trying? That's the problem. Your mind has an extraordinary ability to build stories so coherent and detailed that you mistake them for the truth. But a story is not a fact. A thought is not a sentence. Stoicism invites you to separate what happens outside of you from what happens inside of you. For example, you lose a job. That's the fact. What comes after? "I'm worthless. I'll never find something like this again. It's all over," is not a fact. It's an interpretation. And no, it is not always correct. The reality is that you lost a job, period. The rest is a narrative your mind creates according to your fears, beliefs, and mood. The trap is that this narrative doesn't remain abstract. It drives your behavior. If you believe, "I'll never find something like this again," your job search will be lukewarm, discouraged, almost symbolic. And guess what will happen? You won't find something like it. And that will confirm your initial story. It's a perfect circle of self-sabotage. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire in the midst of wars and plagues, wrote in his Meditations that the weight of suffering often came not from what happened, but from the judgment he placed upon it. If he could learn to step back from his thoughts to judge facts clearly, why couldn't we do the same in much less extreme circumstances? The key lies in developing what the Stoics called prososche, mindful attention, vigilance of the mind. This is not positive thinking or repeating empty phrases. It's a conscious training to observe your thoughts and evaluate them before accepting them as truth. It's like a guard at the city gates. He doesn't let just anyone in. He first asks who you are, where you come from, and what you bring with you. Next time a negative thought appears, don't accept it automatically. Ask it. Is this a fact or an interpretation? What evidence do I have to believe it? Could there be another way to see this? At first, it will feel forced. Later, it will become a reflex. And when that happens, you will have weakened one of the most powerful weapons of self-sabotage, the confusion between thoughts and reality. Let me tell you something personal. A few years ago, before I understood this principle, I received a message that said, "We need to talk." There was no further context. Within seconds, my mind had already written a disaster script. Something bad happened, they're going to give me bad news. Maybe I lost an important opportunity. I felt a knot in my stomach, lost focus on what I was doing, and started replaying everything that could have gone wrong. Hours later, I found out the message was simply to arrange a routine work meeting. Nothing serious. All the suffering I experienced during those hours was the product of a thought I accepted as truth without verifying it. That's the madness we live every day, reacting as if what we think were a confirmed fact, when many times it is not. And the consequence of living like this is that our emotions, decisions, and actions are ruled by fiction. Stoicism proposes that you become a witness to your thoughts, not their prisoner. Imagine your mind as a river. Thoughts are leaves floating on it. Some are green and fresh, others are withered and rotten. If you cling to each leaf as if it were yours, you will end up dragged by the current. But if you learn to watch from the shore, you can decide which to pick up and which to let pass. Don't confuse this with repressing emotions. Recognizing that a thought is not a fact doesn't mean you ignore what you feel. It means you validate the emotion, but question the story that is feeding it. Because an emotion can be legitimate and still be built on a mistaken interpretation. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And he didn't say it to minimize pain, but to remind us that much of our suffering is optional, but only if we are willing to watch over the mind and correct its distortions. Today, your task is this. Every time something stirs you, stop and write in 2 columns. In the first, write the pure facts, as if you were an impartial journalist. In the second, write what you think and feel about those facts. Then compare them. You'll be surprised to discover how little relationship there is between what happened and what your mind told you. When you manage to make this distinction, you regain immense power. The power to respond to life from reason and virtue, not from automatic reaction. And when you act from there, the invisible error loses its strength because it can no longer manipulate you with stories disguised as reality. Remember, your thoughts are like clouds. Some block the sun, others let it shine, but none of them are the sky. You are the sky, and thoughts only pass through it. Do not confuse the clouds with the horizon. Do not confuse what you think with what is. Stoic second lesson, master the dichotomy of control. If you want to find the root of much of your exhaustion, frustration, and the feeling that everything is slipping out of your hands, don't look far. It lies in your habit of fighting battles that are not yours to fight. The invisible error that robs us of the most energy is trying to control the uncontrollable while neglecting the only thing that truly depends on us. Epictetus summed it up in a phrase that should be engraved on every wall. There are things that depend on you and things that don't. Knowing the difference is the key to peace. But almost no one lives this way. We spend the day obsessed with what someone thinks of us, whether circumstances will align, whether a certain person will change, whether the final outcome will match our expectations exactly. The problem is that all of that belongs to the realm of the uncontrollable, and while you're fighting against that wall, what does depend on you, your actions, your habits, your character, remains neglected. Imagine you have a bucket of water and 2 fires, one a meter away, small but growing, and another a kilometer away, massive and beyond your reach. If you run toward the distant one, you'll empty your bucket into nothing and return exhausted. Meanwhile, the small fire, the one you could have put out, will have turned into another monster. This is how we live, spending our inner resources on what cannot be changed, while letting the problems we could have solved grow. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of wars, plagues, and political betrayals, understood this principle with almost superhuman clarity. He could not decide what his enemies would do, whether it would rain, or if an epidemic would ravage part of the empire, but he could decide how to respond, what decisions to make each day, and how to preserve his virtue in the face of chaos. That is the essence of the dichotomy of control. Your power is not in the world, it is in you. Most of our suffering comes from forgetting this. We get stuck in questions like, what if they don't accept me? What if it doesn't go well? What if they don't give me what I deserve? But every what if that includes variables outside of your control is a trap that robs you of life. Stoicism is not indifference. It is not about, I don't care what happens. It is about radical commitment to what you can govern. You cannot decide whether the wind blows against you today, but you can decide whether you adjust your sails or stand still complaining. A practical way to apply this is to make, mentally or physically, a 2-column list whenever something worries you. In the first, write what depends on you. In the second, what does not. Then commit to putting 100% of your energy into the first column and letting go of the second. Not because it doesn't matter, but because insisting on controlling it is useless and destructive. I had to learn this the hard way. I remember a project that was slowly sinking due to decisions made by others. I worked day and night trying to save it, but I spent more time arguing about what others should do than focusing on what I could do myself. The result: exhaustion, resentment, and inevitable failure. Years later, I understood that if I had focused my energy on what I could adjust, I would have preserved my peace and perhaps even found an alternative path before everything collapsed. Self-sabotage thrives in the obsession with the external. If you expect to feel good only when the world fits your plan, you will live your life disappointed. But if you measure your success by your ability to act with virtue, courage, and discipline, regardless of the outcome, you will have won, even when things don't go as you wished. Seneca explained it like this: the wise man adapts to life as the good sailor does to the sea. He uses what he can control and navigates while accepting what he cannot. You do not choose the waves, but you do choose how you steer. Bring it down to your life. You cannot control whether someone understands you, but you can control the clarity with which you explain yourself. You cannot control whether the market improves, but you can control your preparation and financial decisions. You cannot control whether it rains on your wedding day, but you can decide to celebrate with gratitude in the rain. This is not resignation, it is strategy. Because the time and energy you waste on the uncontrollable could be building what is in your hands. And there lies real freedom, not in changing the world, but in governing yourself. The next time you feel life is taking something from you, ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, the Stoic decision is to let go, not to give up, but to redirect that energy toward where you can actually move the needle. Remember, it's not that you don't care about what you can't control. It's that your commitment to what you can control is so strong that you refuse to let the external steal the governance of your soul. Marcus Aurelius made it clear, you may have no control over what happens, but you always have control over how you respond. And in that response, in that daily choice, your life is defined. Third Stoic lesson: change the language you use with yourself. If you want to discover where self-sabotage begins, don't look at what the world says about you. Listen to how you speak to yourself when no one else can hear. The words you use with yourself are seeds. Some blossom into strength, others into fear. And if you've grown accustomed to insulting yourself, belittling yourself, reducing your identity to your mistakes, you don't need enemies on the outside. You already carry one within. Seneca knew this well. In his letters he warned that the mind responds to the tone you impose upon it. If you feed it complaints, it withers. If you instruct it with firmness and clarity, it grows stronger. This is not about repeating empty phrases in front of a mirror, as if trying to force yourself into belief. It's about choosing language that describes reality accurately, while also guiding you toward virtue. The problem is that many confuse honesty with cruelty. They believe that telling themselves, "I'm a disaster," is being truthful, when in fact it's as much a distortion as saying, "I'm perfect." The difference lies in speaking to correct, not to destroy. Imagine a coach who, every time you make a mistake, yells, "You always ruin everything. You'll never learn." How long would it take before you stop trying? That's exactly what happens when you become that coach for yourself. Every phrase that begins with always or never and reduces you to a flaw is a chain you put on yourself. Stoicism proposes a radical change. Replace destructive self-criticism with constructive self-instruction. Instead of, "I'm no good at this," say, "I still need to train this skill." Instead of, "I'm weak," say, "I'm working on becoming stronger." This is not self-deception. It's a more accurate description, because the truth is, you are not your mistake. You are the person who can learn from it. Epictetus taught that facts are neutral. We are the ones who, through our words, color them with hope or despair. The same misstep can be described as a failure or as a lesson. Reality does not change, but you do when you name it differently. I remember the story of a man who, after losing his job, described himself as a failure with no future. That language kept him stuck for months until a friend asked him, "Is it true that you have no future, or is that just your way of saying you're in a period of transition?" That simple question showed him that what was keeping him paralyzed wasn't the loss itself, but the label he had given himself. The mind obeys its director, and that director is you. If each day you give it orders in the form of complaints, your spirit will wither. If you give it orders in the form of goals, your spirit will rise. Changing your language doesn't mean sugarcoating everything. A good teacher doesn't lie about difficulty, but neither does he discourage the student before they even begin. You can tell yourself, "This will be tough, but I have the tools to move forward." That phrase acknowledges reality and at the same time affirms your capacity to act. The Stoics often use the word training to describe life. And in any training, your inner dialogue matters as much as your physical effort. A runner who, in the middle of a marathon, repeats to himself, "I can't go on," will likely not reach the finish line. One who says, "One more step, just one more step," will likely discover he had more strength than he thought. The key lies in 3 principles. 1. Precision. Describe what's happening without absolutist exaggerations. "I made a mistake in this" is different from "everything I do is wrong." 2nd direction, use words that point toward action, not paralysis. "I'm going to fix this" instead of "I'm useless." 3rd commitment, speak as someone engaged in their own progress, not as a judge who only delivers sentences. In practice, you can apply this today. When you notice you're speaking negatively to yourself, stop and reframe. Ask yourself, am I describing the fact or am I attacking my identity? If it's the latter, change the phrase. For example, if you say, "I have no discipline," change it to, "I haven't maintained the discipline I want yet." That word, "yet," opens the door to improvement. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote as if he were his own mentor. It wasn't a diary to complain, but to remind himself who he wanted to be. You can do the same. Each morning, write a sentence that directs you toward virtue. Something like, "Today, I will speak with firmness and compassion, even to myself." Don't forget that your inner dialogue affects not only your mood, but also your decisions. A mind that speaks to itself with respect dares more, perseveres more, and recovers faster. A mind that insults itself shrinks, delays, and gives up. If you want to stop sabotaging yourself, start by stopping the insults. Not because you need to be your own unconditional fan, but because you need to be your own strategic ally. The world will test you enough. You don't need to add yourself as an internal enemy. Remember, you are not what you think. You are what you decide to do with what you think. And if you decide to speak to yourself as a guide rather than as an executioner, you'll discover that many of your chains were just words, and that you can drop them today. Stoic 4th lesson, act small but act today. One of the most subtle and most destructive mistakes of someone who sabotages themselves is waiting for the perfect moment to start. That magical instant when there will be more time, more energy, more clarity, more motivation. But let me tell you a truth you may not want to hear. That perfect moment does not exist. It has never existed. Life will always have something that demands your attention, problems to solve, accumulated fatigue, fears whispering that you are not ready yet. And if you keep waiting for everything to align, you will realize that the waiting became your entire life. Stoicism teaches us that the only moment we can truly work with is the present. Epictetus put it simply, do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you will go on well. And moving forward doesn't mean doing something grand from day one. Moving forward means shifting the needle, even if just a millimeter. This is where many fall into the trap of perfectionism. They believe it's not worth acting unless they can do it on a grand scale, flawlessly. But perfectionism is nothing more than fear disguised as high standards. It keeps you inactive while selling you the illusion that you are just waiting for the right time. The Stoic, on the other hand, despises paralysis. They know that a minimal action today is infinitely more valuable than a perfect plan tomorrow, because action, no matter how small, breaks inertia. And when you break inertia, the rest starts to move. Think of it this way. If you push a giant stone, the first shove is the hardest. After that, every movement becomes easier because you're no longer starting from zero. Life works the same way. If today you make an uncomfortable call, take one step toward your goal, or complete a small habit, tomorrow it will feel more natural to continue. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, didn't write about great conquests as if they were miraculous acts. He wrote about daily consistency, getting up, doing your duty, acting with virtue. Sometimes that meant leading an empire, but other times it simply meant taking care of a pending matter, listening to someone, or exercising to care for the body that had to serve him. The secret lies in breaking down what seems unmanageable. If your goal is to read 50 books a year, start with 5 pages today. If you want to change jobs, start by improving your resume or researching a company for 15 minutes. If you want to regain your health, start by going for a 10-minute walk right now. Every small action is a declaration. I'm not waiting for life to give me permission. Remember that for the Stoics, the right action doesn't depend on the immediate result, but on the fact that it's within your control to do it. Epictetus didn't worry about whether his effort changed the world. He worried about whether he was doing what he ought to do. That is the victory. Acting rightly without being paralyzed by what is beyond your control. There is a story that has always struck me. A Roman soldier, after a devastating battle, was found repairing his broken shield. When asked why he didn't rest, he replied, "Because if they call me again tomorrow, I don't want to say I did nothing to be ready." That is the spirit, doing what you can today, even if it's small, even if it seems insignificant. Perfectionism tells you, until you can do something perfectly, don't start. Stoic wisdom replies, start, and perfection will be built upon imperfection. So here's a practical exercise. Take a goal you've been postponing, write it down. Now break that goal into actions you can complete in under 10 minutes. Pick one and do it today, no matter what happens afterward, because the only thing you can lose is another day without moving forward. Remember that the present is all you are guaranteed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The life of a man is what his thoughts make of it, but also what his actions make of it. And every act, no matter how small, counts. If you want to stop sabotaging yourself, stop waiting. Life will not announce that it's the ideal moment. That moment is now, and now is always small at the beginning. Start today, even if you tremble, even if you doubt. Because years from now, when you look back, you won't remember the perfection of your first step. But you will be deeply grateful that you didn't remain still." Stoic fifth lesson. Make discomfort your training. Self-sabotage rarely announces itself with noise. It usually dresses up as reasonable comfort. It says, "Not now, tomorrow will be better, when I feel more energized, when the conditions align." And you agree because it sounds prudent, but a week passes, a month, a year, And that disguised prudence has shrunk your life. You've mistaken friction for danger, discomfort for a warning sign, the initial tremor for a sentence. And so, without meaning to, you've trained the habit of running away. Excessive comfort weakens character. A muscle that never pushes against resistance atrophies. A will that is never tested becomes whim. Epictetus, who knew the harshness of existence, spoke of prohairesis, the faculty of choosing what is right even when it hurts. Practicing it is not about seeking pain out of pride, but about learning to endure a sensible quota of discomfort as the price of what is valuable. Chosen discomfort is a teacher. It shows you how far you can grow without breaking. Marcus Aurelius understood this. He did not ask fate for a smooth path. He prepared for whichever came. When his body hurt, he wrote, when the empire burned, he ordered his inner world. What obstructs the way becomes the way when you take it as training. That's the spirit, turning each friction into a gym for the soul. Ask yourself honestly, what conversations have you avoided for fear of one uncomfortable minute that cost you years of silent resentment? What dream did you bury because you confused tension with danger? How many times did you silence your voice to avoid discomfort, only to end up uncomfortable within yourself? Discomfort is a precise messenger. It marks the border between the you of yesterday and the one you're called to be. Self-sabotage wears elegant masks. Sometimes it dresses as prudence. Wait until you're 100% ready. Sometimes as identity. I'm not the kind of person who does that. Sometimes as a misunderstood spirituality. If it's meant for me, it will come without effort. Number what is valuable almost always costs effort, attention, and patience. Virtue doesn't appear, it's cultivated. So how do you train with discomfort without falling into harm? Through deliberate micro-exposures, small, safe, repeated doses. 5 more minutes of focus when your mind wants to flee. Saying no where you once betrayed yourself with a yes. Finishing the last set when your body negotiates surrender. Sending that email you keep postponing. Speaking clearly even if your voice trembles. Asking yourself at the edge, can I stay a little longer without losing myself? 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. Create rituals that summon your courage. Before a hard task, breathe, straighten your posture, set a brief intention. I will do what is right, not what is comfortable. Afterward, record what resistances arose, what you learned, what you'll adjust tomorrow. Naming turns vague fear into useful data, and what is useful can be managed. Seneca warned that a soft life makes men fragile. A ship that has only sailed calm waters cannot read the sky. Choose small voluntary storms, less screen time at night, walking a stretch even in the rain, a morning without sugar, a moment of silence with no music or distraction. It's not punishment, it's foresight. This is how you teach your nervous system that it can cross waves without sinking. Distinguish useful pain from useless suffering. Useful is the friction that expands your capacity and brings you closer to your values. Useless is blind self-demand that breaks and empties you. The Stoic doesn't aim to exhaust themselves, they aim to align effort with meaning, rest with awareness. Choose loads that build you, not chains that only display you. A concrete practice for today: choose a noble discomfort and write it in the present tense. I make that pending call. I study for 30 minutes without interruptions. I walk in the rain in silence. At night, evaluate with kindness. Did I do it? What resistances appeared? How did I speak to myself? What will I adjust tomorrow? This courage accounting creates inner evidence. You stop narrating yourself as someone who runs away and start recognizing yourself as someone who stays. Remember, the discomfort you choose today saves you from the pain life would impose tomorrow. If you train the muscle of staying when you tremble, you won't break when the trembling is great. If you learn to say enough where you once conceded, you won't drain yourself just to be liked. If you get your mind used to walking through difficult doors, it will stop inventing monsters behind every threshold. It's not about loving pain, it's about respecting its function. Pain alerts you, discomfort shapes you, both, when read correctly, free you. When discomfort is pure noise, release it. When it's the toll for your growth, pay it with sober joy. Let your standard be not the whim of mood, but the clarity of your principles. And when the temptation to postpone appears, repeat within yourself, like a calm mantra, I can handle a little more truth in the conversation, a little more patience in study, a little more silence before responding, a little more presence in tiredness. That little more, sustained, turns you into someone who no longer trades character for comfort. Imagine the craftsman sanding a table. Each pass seems minimal, but after 100, the wood changes. So does your soul. Each small act of fidelity polishes you. One day you discover you can keep calm where you once exploded, that you can listen where you once interrupted, that you can stay where you once ran away. This difference, invisible to the crowd, is the foundation of your freedom. Discomfort then ceases to be a monster and becomes a demanding companion. It doesn't ask for grand gestures, it asks for consistency. It doesn't demand epic heroism, it demands daily loyalty to what you say matters. Enter your day with this firm decision. Every discomfort will be an invitation to widen my soul, and when you cross it, write it down, count the victory, because the one who trains with discomfort stops sabotaging themselves and finally starts building themselves. Think of your nervous system as an instrument. If you only play easy notes, you will never be tuned for complex pieces. Micro-exposures are daily scales. They prepare your body for greater challenges without breaking it. In a crisis, you will already know your deep breathing. You will know how to anchor attention to your feet, and you will see that the trembling fades when you don't feed it with stories. Example: you must give a presentation and want to postpone it. Train like this. Write 3 ideas in 10 minutes, fix your gaze on a point for 1 minute, breathe 4 by 4, and send the invitation. Perfect? Number enough to move the needle? Yes. The next day, 1 more step. The staircase is built step by step. There's no elevator to mastery. And when you fail, apply the golden rule. Don't judge yourself for the fall, judge yourself for the return. Coming back to the plan after a stumble is a muscle. One bad day doesn't define your character. Your decision to restart without drama does. That's where you break the cycle of self-sabotage. You return, breathe, and continue. The most dangerous enemy is not the one outside. It's the one living inside you, keeping you from moving forward. If you've ever felt that you were the one dimming your own light, this is your moment. Subscribing may seem like a small gesture, but to us it means everything. It allows us to continue creating this refuge for those ready to stop sabotaging themselves and start living with purpose. Here you'll discover how to unmask those invisible thoughts and habits that hold you back and turn them into strength and clarity. Because freedom doesn't begin when everything improves outside. It begins when you stop being your own enemy. Stoic 6th lesson: set boundaries to protect your virtue. Saying yes to everything is a slow way of saying no to yourself. It may appear to be an act of kindness, cooperation, and goodwill, but in reality, it is often a silent surrender. It is the unspoken agreement that your time, energy, and peace are available to anyone who asks, regardless of the cost you pay. This is how the invisible mistake begins. You give so much, so often, that one day you no longer know which part of your life still belongs to you. Self-sabotage does not always come in the form of self-criticism or procrastination. Sometimes it dresses itself in excessive kindness, that almost automatic urge to avoid discomfort, to please, to keep external peace, even while your inner peace is cracking. You think you are being a good person, but in truth, you are training yourself to slowly disappear. Marcus Aurelius, who carried the weight of an empire, never confused virtue with complacency. He knew that acting justly meant taking care of what was his responsibility, but also setting the boundaries necessary to prevent his character from being diluted. Without boundaries, virtue becomes contaminated with resentment, because every time you say yes when you truly want to say no, you are planting a seed of resentment toward others and toward yourself. Ask yourself, how many times have you accepted an extra task when you were already exhausted? How many times have you listened to someone vent for hours while your own mind begged for silence? How many times have you set aside something important to you because someone else decided their needs were more urgent? And perhaps most importantly, how many of those times did you praise yourself for being a good person, even though inside you felt used? The Stoic does not live to please. They live to act in coherence with their principles, and coherence requires boundaries. Clear, firm boundaries, expressed calmly but without hesitation. A timely no is not a rejection of the person. It is an affirmation of who you are and what you value. Epictetus taught that our freedom lies in prohairesis, the ability to choose our response. Setting a boundary is the exercise of that freedom. It means you do not react on autopilot. You decide from your center. Before you respond, you ask yourself, does this protect my peace? Does this respect my time? Is this aligned with my values? If the answer is no, the boundary is non-negotiable. Boundaries will not always be welcomed. Some people will be upset, call you selfish, or try to manipulate you into giving in again. That's normal. They were used to your borderless version. But remember, their discomfort is not your fault. It is their adjustment. The boundary is not against them. It is in favor of you. The key is to learn to say no without guilt. Practice it in small situations. Decline a plan you don't want. Delegate a task that isn't yours. Leave a message unanswered until you have the mental space to respond. Each time you do this, your mind will register that nothing terrible happens, that you do not lose your worth by not being constantly available, that the people who truly respect you will still be there. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculation about how a man should be. Be one." In your case, it could be adapted. Do not waste your life justifying why you need rest, peace, or time. Simply take it. A boundary is not debated endlessly. It is communicated, upheld, and respected. A practical exercise. For 1 week, write down each time you say yes when you wanted to say no. At the end of the week, review the list and ask yourself, what was the cost of each yes? Hours of sleep, time with your family, energy for an important project. You will see that every concession has a price, and that your boundaries are not whims, but investments in what truly matters. Seneca warned about the plundering of time. He said we would never allow others to steal our money, yet we hand over minutes and hours without defense. Your boundaries are the walls that protect your time, and your time is the raw material of your life. Without it, there are no projects, no rest, no growth. Do not fear losing people because you set boundaries. Fear losing yourself because you don't. Anyone who leaves because they could no longer use your time and energy at will was not an ally, but a consumer. Those who stay, even if they sometimes don't understand your no, are those who respect your worth. Practice boundaries with serenity, not harshness. You do not need to over-justify or engage in long defenses. A simple, "I'm sorry, I can't," or "this is not something I can do right now," is enough. Everything else is noise that only feeds argument. Quiet firmness is the language of self-respect. Every time you set a boundary, you are telling yourself, I deserve to care for myself as much as I care for others. You are acknowledging that your energy is finite and cannot be spent on everything and everyone without consequences. You are protecting your virtue, your peace, and your ability to continue giving your best, but from a place of integrity, not depletion. One last reminder, boundaries are not walls that isolate you. They are doors with locks. You decide when to open, to whom, and under what conditions. That is true Stoic freedom. not living for others' approval, but acting from the calm strength of knowing who you are and what you will not negotiate. Set a boundary today, not tomorrow, not when the time is right, today. Because every day you live without them is another day your life is defined by others' agendas instead of your own. And the price for that, even if you don't see it immediately, will always be far too high. Stoic seventh lesson: eliminate attention leaks. Self-sabotage does not always appear as a major visible mistake. Sometimes it disguises itself as small distractions, constant interruptions, or that seemingly harmless habit of just checking for a moment your phone, social media, or email. The danger is that these leaks do not just consume minutes, they tear apart your capacity for concentration, drain your mental energy, and erode your self-discipline without you even realizing it. Seneca warned 2,000 years ago, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And wasting it does not only mean throwing away entire hours. It also means letting your attention fragment to the point where you never enter a state of deep focus. The result is that you end the day exhausted, but with the uncomfortable feeling that you haven't truly progressed on what really matters. Imagine your attention as a container full of water. Every time you interrupt a task, to check a notification, make an irrelevant search, or immediately respond to a message that could wait, you make a small hole in that container. At first you don't notice it, but over time, the water escapes faster than you can fill it. By the end of the day, your mind is dry, not because of what you did, but because of what you allowed to drain it. Stoicism understands the value of concentration as an act of self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of wars and imperial responsibilities, wrote about the need to protect the mind from unnecessary distractions. If he, with an empire to govern, found time to focus, what real excuse do we have not to? Eliminating attention leaks is not just a matter of productivity, it is a matter of virtue. Because attention is the resource that determines where you invest your life, and what you give your attention to grows. If you give your attention to noise, the noise will grow. If you give it to what strengthens you, your character will solidify. The first step is recognizing that multitasking is a dangerous illusion. We believe we can do multiple things at once and be equally efficient, but science confirms the mind switches focus sequentially, not simultaneously. Each jump between tasks costs energy and time. The Stoics would have described it as living scattered, and living scattered is living weakened. Create a space free of deliberate interruptions. This doesn't mean isolating yourself forever, but having protected moments as if they were sacred. Blocks of work or reflection without a phone, without social media, without notifications. Ritualize the start, perhaps a deep breath, an inspiring phrase, or a clear question. What is the most important thing I can do right now? Ritualize the end, a brief review of what you achieved, and a moment of gratitude for having kept your commitment. It's also crucial to learn to distinguish between the urgent and the important. Most attention leaks disguise themselves as urgency, a message that seems to require an immediate answer, a call that breaks your rhythm, a news story you just have to read. The Stoic understands that not every external demand deserves immediate attention. Responding calmly and at the right time is a form of self-mastery. A practical exercise. For 3 days, record how many times you voluntarily interrupt your main activity to do something irrelevant. Write it all down without judgment. Then review the list and ask yourself, what was I avoiding each time I got distracted? Many times, the attention leak is not about a lack of discipline, but about fear or discomfort toward the task in front of you. The mind looks for an escape and finds it in noise. To counter this, cultivate productive discomfort. Stay with the uncomfortable task a few minutes longer than your impulse dictates. Just as a muscle grows with resistance, your capacity for concentration grows by resisting the temptation to abandon focus. Also remember that it's not about filling your day with tasks, but filling it with intention. Epictetus did not measure the value of a day by the number of things done, but by the quality of what was done. You can work fewer hours than someone else, but if you do it with full attention, you will progress further and with less wear. Another strategy is to create leak-free zones. It could be a clean desk, a place without internet access, a quiet library, or even a specific hour when everyone around you knows you are not available. It's not rigidity, it's respect for your own time. Marcus Aurelius summed it up perfectly. Give each thing the time it requires. No more, no less. Attention is a contract with yourself, and breaking it constantly is training your mind to believe that your commitments don't matter. In the end, eliminating attention leaks is an act of self-love. It means you value what you are capable of building more than the immediate pleasure of a distraction, that you understand that life is not lost in great catastrophes, but in thousands of small detours you accepted without questioning. Make your attention a protected territory, not out of fear of losing time, but because you know that what you focus your mind on becomes your life. And a life focused on what matters is, by definition, a life better lived. Stoic 8th lesson. Surround yourself with example, not excuses. The environment you live in is like the climate for a plant. No matter how much potential you have, if the environment is hostile or barren, your growth will be weak. Self-sabotage rarely grows in a vacuum. It feeds on the conversations you hear, the attitudes you normalize, and the people you spend your time with. And often, without realizing it, you surround yourself with excuses in human form. Excuses that say, "It's not a big deal, everyone does it, we'll start tomorrow, it's not worth the effort." At first they sound harmless, even understanding, but repeat them enough, and they become the soundtrack of your life. And like any repetitive melody, they eventually settle in your head until you hum them without thinking. Marcus Aurelius warned that the soul is dyed the color of its thoughts. I would add, and those thoughts are often painted with the palette of the people around us. If you spend time with people who constantly justify their inaction, you will end up accepting mediocrity as an acceptable standard. On the other hand, if your circle is made up of people who, without shouting it, live with discipline, purpose, and integrity, you will inevitably raise your own standard. This is not about becoming arrogant or feeling superior. Stoicism does not promote elitist isolation, but conscious choice of influences. Just as you would not expose your body to polluted air every day, do not let your mind constantly breathe the smoke of complaint, self-pity, or cynicism. Ask yourself, do the people I interact with most bring me closer to or further from the life I want to live? It's not a comfortable question, because sometimes the answer forces you to create distance from old friends, close family members, or colleagues with whom you spend much of your day. And here is where Stoic virtue comes in: the courage to choose what strengthens your character, even if it hurts. Surrounding yourself with example means actively seeking role models. They don't have to be perfect, no one is, but they should embody qualities you want to cultivate. Temperance, consistency, integrity, honesty, resilience in the face of adversity. You can find them in your daily life, in a book, in history, in an inspiring talk. Example is silent fuel. It doesn't push you, it draws you. Seneca practiced this by writing letters to Lucilius, where they exchanged ideas and reflections to help each other stay on the path of virtue. It was a mutual exchange of example. Today, we have access to an infinite library of thoughts, biographies, and conversations from great minds. But that access means nothing if we keep choosing to fill our time with the triviality of those who only know how to pull us downward. A practical exercise. Make an inventory of your environment, not just people, but everything you consume: social media, books, series, music, news. Give each element a simple label. Does it bring me closer or take me further away? Don't settle for "it entertains me" or "it informs me." Ask yourself if it nourishes you, strengthens you, elevates your thinking. Also remember that example is not only what you receive, but what you give. Someone, somewhere, is taking you as a reference without you knowing it. Maybe a child, a friend, a colleague, the way you act, how you face difficulties, how you speak about others. All of it is being observed and, in some way, replicated. This should push you to live with greater coherence. The Stoic knows that character is forged in community. We do not grow in isolation, but we also do not grow well in just any soil. Choose yours carefully. If your current circle is dominated by complaint, excuses, and mediocrity, it doesn't mean you have to cut ties immediately, but you should set clear boundaries and actively seek new spaces where excellence is the norm. Think about how your behavior changes when you are surrounded by people who train their bodies, who read, who work with passion, who treat others with respect, who keep their word. Without being told to, you begin to raise your standard so as not to fall behind. The same happens in reverse. If everyone settles for the minimum, it's only a matter of time before you do too. Marcus Aurelius wrote to remind himself that he should be like the rock against which the waves break, without being swept away by them. That rock is not placed by chance in calm waters. It stands in the middle of storms, yet remains firm. Surround yourself with other rocks, not with driftwood. If today you feel that your environment is pulling you down, understand this. You cannot change everyone, but you can choose where you place most of your time and energy. Spend more hours with those who inspire you, even if it's at a distance through a book or a virtual mentor, than with those who drain you. And above all, be the example you seek. Don't wait to find flawless people before improving yourself. Become that person, because when you change, your environment inevitably changes with you. Some will stay, others will leave, and new allies will arrive who speak your same language of virtue. In the end, surrounding yourself with example is not just a strategy to avoid self-sabotage. It is a declaration of who you decide to be. And that decision, like all the ones that matter, begins in silence but echoes forever. Stoic ninth lesson. Decide who you are before you decide what to do. Much of self-sabotage does not come from laziness or lack of talent, but from something far more subtle and dangerous: the absence of a clear identity. When you don't know who you are, your actions become improvised responses to the randomness of the moment, to other people's expectations, to the trends of the day. And living like that is like building a house on sand. Every decision you make wobbles, every external wind shakes it. Epictetus said, "In life you cannot call yourself a philosopher and then act like a fool." The same applies to any virtue you claim to want to cultivate. You cannot call yourself disciplined and then let the first excuse defeat you. You cannot call yourself honest and then lie to avoid conflict. You cannot say you want peace of mind and spend the day feeding drama. Inconsistency is the fertile ground of self-sabotage. The problem is that many decide what to do before deciding who to be. They rush toward goals that haven't even passed through the filter of their values. They chase jobs, relationships, projects, and lifestyles that do not align with their essence. And when their motivation runs out, they blame themselves for not having endured. But the problem wasn't their resilience. It was that they were rowing in the wrong direction from the start. Deciding who you are is not a poetic gesture to hang on a wall. It is an operational commitment that guides every one of your daily choices. It means having your value framework so clear that in any situation, the question is not, "What do I want to do?" but "What would the person I have decided to be do?" and then answering with actions, not good intentions. Marcus Aurelius, as emperor, did not wake up each day wondering if he felt like being just, compassionate, or disciplined. He had already decided he would be, and his actions were the consequence of that decision. That is the power of a defined identity. It eliminates the constant negotiation with oneself. Imagine your identity as a compass. Without it, every temptation, every external pressure, every fear throws you off course by a few degrees. And a few degrees are enough for you, over time, to end up in a place completely different from where you wanted to go. With it, even in the midst of storms, you correct your course and return to the path. Stoicism reminds us that virtue is not improvised, it is trained, and that training begins with declaring your principles. It can be as simple as writing on a piece of paper, "I am someone who," and completing the sentence with qualities you want to embody. For example, "I am someone who stays calm under pressure. I am someone who keeps their word. I am someone who acts even when afraid." Once defined, everything else either aligns or is discarded. An invisible filter emerges. If an opportunity, person, or decision contradicts your identity, no matter how attractive it seems, it has no place in your life. And if something demands effort, discomfort, or time, but aligns with who you are, you accept it without complaint, because it is part of your chosen nature. Here is a key point. Identity is not declared once and forgotten. It is reinforced with every consistent action and eroded with every betrayal of yourself. Self-sabotage often disguises itself as small exceptions. "Just this once, I won't go to training. This lie is for a good cause. Today it doesn't matter if I break my routine." But those exceptions repeated teach you that your principles are negotiable, and when your principles are negotiable, your identity becomes smoke. To break this cycle, practice daily self-observation. At the end of the day, ask yourself, did I act like the person I want to be? If the answer is yes, celebrate it even if the action was small. If the answer is no, don't punish yourself, but take note and adjust tomorrow. The Stoic does not seek immediate perfection, but consistency in the right direction. Another useful tool is visualization. Before facing a challenging situation, an uncomfortable conversation, a difficult decision, a temptation, imagine how your ideal self would respond and commit to acting that way. Not as a fantasy, but as a mental rehearsal that prepares the ground for real action. Also surround yourself with people who reinforce your identity, not those who question or ridicule it. If you have decided to be a person of integrity, being around those who see honesty as a weakness is a constant risk. If you have decided to be disciplined, spending time with those who celebrate indiscipline as freedom will pull you downward. Remember, your environment does not define who you are, but it powerfully influences how long you can sustain it. Defining who you are before deciding what to do also protects your energy. When you know your worth does not depend on external approval or immediate results, you stop exhausting yourself with meaningless decisions. You act from a duty to yourself, not from a desire to please everyone. And that is the essence of the inner freedom the Stoics pursued. Ask yourself right now, if your life were a book and tomorrow someone read any random chapter, what conclusions would they draw about who you are? Would they see consistency, strength, purpose? Or would they see someone who reacts differently depending on company, mood, or pressure? The answer may hurt, but it can also be the turning point you've been waiting for. Ultimately, deciding who you are before deciding what to do is not an exercise in ego, but in responsibility. Because your actions affect more than just you. They influence your family, your work team, your friends, even strangers who observe you without your knowledge. Every time you act from a firm identity, you not only strengthen yourself, but also leave an imprint of example on the world. So don't start by asking, what should I do now? Start with something far more important. Who must I be so that what I do makes sense? Once you answer, the rest stops being a sea of doubts and becomes a clear path. Not always easy, but clear. And like every worthwhile path, it is walked one step at a time, with the certainty that you are moving in the right direction. Stoic 10th lesson: count victories, not just faults. There is a silent enemy that undermines the confidence of thousands of people every day, and it is rarely detected in time: the obsession with recording only mistakes. It's that voice that at the end of the day doesn't remember the times you acted with courage, but the 2 times you hesitated. That doesn't mention the steps you took, only the times you stumbled. And when this pattern takes root, your mind begins to believe that you are a sum of failures, not a work in progress. Seneca had a nightly habit. He reviewed his day, not to flog himself, but to fine-tune the helm. He noted what he had done well, what he could improve, and what he should correct. The difference is that he did it with serenity, not with a whip. We, on the other hand, tend to ignore successes entirely, as if they were a bare minimum unworthy of recognition. And that is a mistake that fuels self-sabotage. The brain has a negativity bias. It pays more attention to what's wrong than to what's right. It's an evolutionary mechanism for survival, but applied to your daily life, it can become a prison. If you only focus your attention on faults, you reinforce the idea that you always fail, that you're not moving forward, that you're not enough. And when you believe that, you act accordingly. You avoid new attempts, reject opportunities, and confirm your own narrative. Stoicism offers a different practice, acknowledging every small victory, however modest it may seem, because those victories are proof that you are not static, that even on difficult days you keep moving forward. It can be as simple as keeping calm in a difficult conversation, completing a task you had been putting off for weeks, or choosing silence instead of an impulsive reaction. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, did not praise himself to inflate his ego, but to remember that, even in the midst of battles and enormous responsibilities, he was capable of acting with virtue. That remembrance did not make him complacent. It made him stronger. And that is what happens when you train your mind to count your victories. You don't become self-satisfied. You become more resilient. Think about this. If at the end of each day you only write down your mistakes, you are training your brain to look for flaws. But if, in addition to acknowledging them, you record 3 actions that were consistent with your values, you are training your brain to look for virtues. And what you look for, you find. What you find, you reinforce. A Stoic practice you can apply starting today is the closing inventory. Before going to sleep, write down 3 things you did well. And it doesn't matter if they are small. And 1 thing you will improve tomorrow. This transforms self-criticism into constructive self-evaluation. It's not the same to say, "I'm a mess," as to say, "Today I didn't manage my time well. Tomorrow I'll try a different method." The first phrase traps you, the second gives you a way out. It is also important to understand that counting victories does not mean ignoring mistakes. The Stoic does not run from the truth, he faces it. But he knows that progress is not built from chronic guilt, but from constant adjustment. Mistakes are data, not a sentence. Victories are momentum to keep going. Picture your life as an emotional bank account. Every mistake is a withdrawal. Every acknowledged victory is a deposit. If you only record withdrawals, your emotional balance will always appear negative, even if you have had income. If you note your deposits, your achievements, you can see that the account is still growing, and that gives you the energy to keep investing in yourself. This approach also combats perfectionism, which is one of the most loyal allies of self-sabotage. The perfectionist erases all victories if a single mistake is made. The Stoic, on the other hand, understands that excellence is built by adding more successes than failures over time, not by eliminating every imperfection instantly. There's something more. When you learn to count your victories, you start to see them in others. And that changes the way you relate to people. You stop being an implacable judge and become an ally who recognizes and encourages others' progress. This creates environments where growth is easier, because motivation is fueled by fair validation, not by constant fear of making mistakes. For this practice to be effective, you must anchor it in your routines. You can do it at the end of your workday, before sleeping, or in a moment of calm. What matters is that it becomes a conscious ritual. You can even share it with someone you trust. Each of you says 3 victories of the day and 1 improvement for tomorrow. This creates a shared commitment and strengthens discipline. Do not underestimate the impact of recognizing a small achievement. Today, it may seem insignificant that you chose to eat healthily instead of giving in to temptation, but in a year, that sustained pattern may have transformed your health. Today, it may seem small that you read 2 pages of a book, but in 6 months, you will have finished several. Progress is made of these small accumulated victories. Remember, self-sabotage feeds on selective forgetting. You forget your achievements and remember only your falls. The Stoic proposal is clear: record both, but give victories the place they deserve, because they are what will remind you on dark days that you did not get this far by accident. If tomorrow you face a challenge, look back and review your victories, not as trophies to boast about, but as irrefutable proof that you can. Make sure each day leaves you at least one reason to say, "Today I was up to the standard of the person I want to be." And when you accumulate them, you will find that your identity is no longer defined by your faults, but by the sum of your virtuous acts. In the words of Seneca, it is not that we have little time, but that we waste much. Do not also waste the evidence of your own growth. Count them, celebrate them, and let them push you toward your next victory. The point where truth meets your courage. Breathe. Stay with me for just a moment longer. This closing is not a summary or a final applause. It is a mirror. Today we named what steals your life without making a sound. That invisible error that sabotages your decisions, that makes you postpone what matters, that convinces you that thinking is the same as acting, that offers you polished excuses not to cross the threshold you know belongs to you. It hurts to see it, yes, but it hurts more to keep walking blind. You did not get here by accident. You arrived because something in you got tired of negotiating with your own doubts, because you sensed that you can no longer keep indebting yourself with promises you don't fulfill, and because you are ready to choose yourself with a new kind of seriousness. That's what Stoicism does when it becomes flesh. It gives you back the helm. It doesn't promise a life without waves. It trains you to steer your ship. Look at yourself with honesty. How much of what you say you cannot do is, in truth, just an unverified idea? How much exhaustion comes from chasing what was never in your hands? How much peace have you lost by speaking to yourself like an enemy? How many opportunities sank because you waited for a perfect moment that never arrived? We didn't come today to blame you. We came to give you back responsibility, another way of saying power. There is a place inside where excuses have no authority. It is a sober, silent, deeply personal territory. There are no grand speeches there. There are acts. There, you do not trade your character for comfort. There you don't need the world to be kind in order to remain integral. That place is your center, and the path back to it is not mystical. It is daily. You walk it with a decision that is both humble and fierce at the same time, to do what is right today, even if it's not comfortable, to speak the truth today, even if you tremble, to stand your ground today, even if the sea roars. Stop and feel your breath. Life is here, not in that idealized tomorrow that serves as your alibi, not in the yesterday you use to justify your inertia. Here, if you can inhabit this moment, you can begin to dismantle the mechanism of self-sabotage. Because the invisible error feeds on autopilot, it suffocates when presence appears. I want you to carry an image, a door left ajar. Behind it, light, real work, conversations that matter, habits that honor you, rest that isn't escape, bonds that require no masks. In front, where you stand, familiarity, the known, even if it hurts. Between the two spaces there is a single step, not 10, one, not perfect, Enough. That step today may be small, but it's the size of your freedom. I know fear whispers, "What if I fail again?" Listen without obeying. The Stoic does not eliminate fear. They walk with it at the pace of their courage. Learn to tell yourself just a little more presence before you respond, a little more silence before you give up, a little more loyalty to what you declared important when no one was watching. That little more, sustained, is the exact distance between the self that sabotages and the self that takes charge. You are not alone on this path. This space exists to remind you that discipline can be compassionate, that truth can be tender, that strength can be calm. We are a community that does not applaud masks. It celebrates honest effort. That does not demand perfection. It walks with you through the process. Every episode is a point of leverage for you to lift your inner world with your own hands, without theatrics and without excuses. If something you heard today brushed against your soul, if a phrase unsettled you in a good way, if you felt the urge to begin differently, if you noticed your breathing return to its place, then I invite you to stay. Subscribe. Not out of vanity for numbers, but to keep a refuge where training your character matters more than entertaining your ego. Your subscription makes it possible for this voice to reach someone who right now is about to give up. And that someone could be you in 2 weeks. Leave the light on. Before you go, make yourself this short promise. Today I will act small, but today. Write it down, carry it in your pocket. Recite it when fatigue offers you impeccable excuses. Return to it when you forget who you decided to be. And when the day ends, count one victory. Just one. It's your way of saying to yourself, I'm still here, I'm still in charge, I'm still practicing. Life doesn't change with shouting, it changes with gestures. A timely no that protects you. A conscious yes that commits you. A pause that prevents a wound. An uncomfortable call that opens a path. A rest that feeds your strength instead of numbing your pain. These gestures repeated become character, and character sustained becomes destiny. If you were waiting for a sign, let me be explicit. This is it. Not because I say so, but because you felt it. Because somewhere in this session you recognized yourself. Don't let that recognition dissolve into habit. Breathe. Choose. Act. Don't make a spectacle. Take responsibility. Personal greatness makes no noise. It shows in the peace with which you go to bed and the dignity with which you rise. And if you falter tomorrow, come back. We will be here. To remind you that not everything you think is true, that your worth is not up for negotiation in exchange for approval, that honest action outweighs fear, that discomfort can be training, that boundaries are self-love in practice, that attention is a sanctuary, that your environment matters, that your identity is a decision, and that your progress deserves to be counted, not as dogma, but as practice. Thank you for making it to the end. Thank you for your time. It is your life. Thank you for the courage to look at yourself without adornment. Leave lighter, with fewer excuses and with a decision. I'll see you at the next meeting. And remember, the invisible stops governing when you become visible to yourself. Where the alibi ends, freedom begins. Before we close, I suggest a simple gesture to mark the crossing of the threshold. Write in the comments, I choose to act today, and name one concrete step you will take in the next 24 hours. It's not a performance, it's visible commitment. Promises that aren't embodied evaporate. Decisions declared become a path. If this space has supported you, given you clarity, or reminded you of the voice within, subscribe and share this episode with someone who needs it. Tomorrow, that someone might be you. Or perhaps it's that person who seems strong, yet crumbles in silence. Make this community a beacon for those walking in the dark. Guard your day as you would someone you love, with care. Choose calm over haste, discipline over impulse. Rise with the dignity of one who seeks no applause, only coherence, Do not run to arrive first, walk to arrive whole. Close your eyes, if you can. Listen to your breath. Here is where it all begins. You return, you choose, you proceed. And when you hesitate, come back to this home. Here we don't make a spectacle, we practice character. You are always welcome. Your voice matters here. Every reflection strengthens and elevates our community, reflecting the true worth of each individual and contributing to our shared Stoic identity. The reflection that receives the most support will be pinned as a banner of this community of Stoic minds, a community that does not run from pain, but walks through it with courage, with wisdom, with honor. See you in our next meeting in Stoicism for Winners, where we will continue exploring the riches of Stoic wisdom applied to modern life. Now, take the opportunity to deepen your understanding of Stoicism with new recommended podcast sessions. Follow us so you don't miss a single reflection that could help you at just the moment life feels overwhelming. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we publish episodes designed to accompany you when life feels heavy, when it's hard to keep calm, when you need a word to remind you who you are. Not following us is risking missing exactly that lesson that could return to you the peace you've been seeking. Until we meet again, remember, you are the sole owner of your perception, the creator of your peace, and the warrior of your own battle. This is the legacy of Stoicism, the art of being invincible,